To learn about how to effectively plan my lessons, I interviewed two teachers at my school about their lesson planning process. Let's meet them and find out more.
My name is Ms. Barnes. I've been teaching MYP Sciences for the last 6 years. This last year, I've been teaching grades 6 and 7 MYP General Science.
Okay, I'm Mr. Quine. I'm a mathematics teacher, currently teaching MYP from grades 7 through to 10. So when I'm planning a lesson, I look at the overview, the unit overview first, the midterm planning. And first thing is to decide within that hour lesson what the objectives are, what I expect the students to learn by the end. I take that end point and then work backwards. Think about their prior knowledge and start building the lesson from then. But it's mainly the first step is looking at what I expect them or would like them to be able to do by the end of the lesson.
The individual lesson plans ultimately go back to the expected outcome of the unit. So looking at the unit, what tasks the students are expected to do by the end of the unit, and then developing each lesson, building up to the skills that they need to finish that task. So it depends on the type of task for the unit. If it's lab design, then there will be smaller individual lessons that focus on the individual components of lab design.
That can depend from topic to topic, from grade level to grade level, usually fairly detailed in terms of the particular exercises or activities that I want the students to take part in. Also, a reasonable amount of detail in terms of the main discussion questions, perhaps, because a lot of the lessons that I plan are based around a discussion of the topic between myself and the students before they go on and experiment and practice the skills themselves.
Generally speaking, I start with new vocabulary that the kids might need. There's no point in using words they don't know, so there's a little bit of an emphasis on new words. I might find videos to help illustrate the meaning of the word or the concept, pictures of things. I try to incorporate graphics for kids, especially the second language learners. Seems to stick a little bit better if they have something visual to attach it to. So I try to keep it mostly visual, but there is some talk and chalk.
Not a formal one. I did start in my early days of teaching following quite a strict template, but now it's kind of an informal template that I use, that I know the structure of a lesson, what works for me, and I've planned the lesson based around that structure really. I was going to say, I plan straight into software, whether that's PowerPoint or Smartboard software, and keep those lessons so I can build on them next time. So keeping it in those PowerPoints, not things for kids to make notes of, but the questions and the maybe images sometimes that I want to use as prompts to start the questioning, and also a record of the activities that I've done so that I can then build from that. So I use, most often now, it's the Promethean software. That's what I use to plan into. My plans go directly into that, and then I can build on them next time. From a lesson by lesson point of view, I never go more than 2 lessons ahead, because things can change so much within mathematics. If you go, I find trying to plan any further ahead than that, and the plans have to be reworked anyway. So normally 1 or 2 lessons ahead is where I'm working, so a couple of days in advance maybe.
So each school has their own curriculum, their topics that they're going to teach in each grade level, and it's generally broken up into 3 or 4 different topics. So at the beginning of a new topic, I would look at what the kids are expected to know by the end of the topic, and then try to start with the simplest bits and build on top to the end. So it's always planning every lesson, every unit with the end result in mind so that the kids aren't asked to do something at the end that they weren't actually prepared to do from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's difficult and depends from topic to topic. There are always going to be some students that struggle with a particular topic and some students that find it easy and rush further ahead. Planning material that can be used to support those that are struggling and planning extra material for those that do finish quickly and move ahead is part of it, while still trying to keep the lesson moving at a pace that's good for most. It's always the problem with trying to teach to 20 different students at the same time, where the previous experience and their ability can differ. So within our school, there's differentiation going on from the very start because the students are streamed. So we do have a support group and we have an extended group that are meant to be working either slightly slower or slightly quicker than the standard cohort. So differentiation starts there at that point. For the extended classes, pushing them further, bringing on the next step of material, the way that maths works, there's always another step, stretch themselves and moves on to something else. So bringing those new ideas, maybe different applications, different contexts, and having that kind of material. And at the other end, at the support end, structuring things, scaffolding things more, doing things step by step, breaking down the process with different activities. Normally, that's what's necessary to make sure that they do keep up.
No, it has to be planned for because it's not going to happen on accident. So I just try to present the information in as many different ways as I can to present it. So kids will be required to write things down. They might have to watch a video. They might have to go through a PowerPoint that has animations and links to outside resources. When I'm going through a unit, I provide resources to the kids, like BBC bite-sized resources are generally pretty age-appropriate. Brain Pop is great for introduction of new vocabulary. It's not so great for the super specific parts of things, but for introductory purposes, it's easy, it's simplistic, and it's illustrated so the kids can hear it. That video also provides English subtitles, so for kids that are struggling with the language and maybe they don't understand every word when they hear it, they can at least read it. And they have access to that at home. So if they want to rewatch it at home, they can.
Oh, definitely. It definitely has. The more experience that I've had, the more times I've had to practice different methods on different topics. I've come up with my own favoured methods of teaching different topics, of where to start. Knowing common misconceptions is a big thing, knowing where the students are going to come unstuck and trying to work in ways to use that to help their learning. But always looking for more interesting, more varied activities and ways of teaching the topics as well. It's what keeps the job interesting. You need to be able to keep pushing things on, finding more interesting ways and better ways of doing things.
No, not really. I mean, when I first started teaching as a new teacher, you have to submit lesson plans for observations and things like that. So I actually did write them. But it was the process of doing it was always the same. So starting teaching in California with California state standards, each unit, I looked at what the kids needed to know by the end of the unit and went backward from there. Like what foundation do they need, and then built on it through hands-on activities and in-class discussions, reading videos, again, diagrams, worksheets, whatever practice stuff they needed. But it was always with the end in mind.
Yes, I think, there's no way that you can plan an hour's lesson and then just stick to that no matter what. Questioning, checking the students' work as it's progressing means that quite often an hour's lesson as planned isn't what is delivered by the end, or the parts that I may have thought would have taken 10 minutes may take 5 minutes, may take 20. But there's got to be continual assessment for the students learning to adjust that plan, and room's got to be built into the plan to allow for that as well, whether that's to extend the lesson, so to continue at a later point, or whether to move things along much quicker, go in different directions. Students' questions can also take the lesson in different directions, hopefully relevant directions. Sometimes maybe different tangents that are worth investigating because they're showing an interest and does have a relevance. So you've always got to be prepared, I think, to adjust a lesson plan.
Yeah, no two classes are the same. Or you walk in, and I think probably half of teaching is ad-libbing. You walk in and you have something in mind and the class just falls apart. It doesn't work. The kids, I don't know, they had an assembly in the morning and then they come in and they're all riled up, or they were gone half the day on a field trip. Things never go as planned. So you might try it on a class and you meet it with marginal success. So you have to go back to the drawing board a little bit and restructure, redo things. And every class has its own chemistry. So what works great in one class may not work in another class.
I think the most important thing is questioning. I think questioning is really important when planning a lesson, and it's something that does become second nature. But think about the questions that you want to ask and that you want the students to answer and you want the students to think about. So it's a really key part of the plan is, what are you going to ask? How are you going to direct their learning? The rest of it comes with practice in terms of pacing, in terms of challenge, in terms of different activities, and they do keep changing. But I think the questioning is really key, thinking about what questions you do want to ask.
Flexibility. It's never going to go the way you want it to go. And with science, you very rarely get the results you want. Even when you're doing a textbook lab, something will go wrong. I'm not kidding. And if it involves enzymes, just don't bet on it. Seriously though, flexibility. I mean, you get into a class and a kid spills an entire bottle of chemical on the floor and you have to regroup. You just have to be flexible. But then again, start with the end point in mind. Always look at the big picture and then go backward from there.
Both teachers really emphasize seeing the big picture, identifying the objectives of the unit, working backwards to create a step-by-step plan for students to meet those objectives. Both teachers also describe different ways of doing this. Mr. Quine, a maths teacher, has a structured lesson planning format. Ms. Barnes, on the other hand, because of the practical, hands-on nature of science, has to be a lot more flexible. I think the more flexible your lesson planning is, the more important it is to not lose sight of the objectives of the big picture. The different approaches made me realize that depending on your teaching style and subject, the approach to planning is very different and you need to find what works for you. At our school, there are no set lesson planning formats, so we have the freedom to do this. Flexibility and responsiveness when things go wrong seem to be essential skills that will develop with experience. Assessing the lesson plans, revising them during and after the lesson, and keeping them organized for future reference will help develop a successful planning process that will develop and improve over time.